Alright, so this is the ScaleTrains Norfolk Southern Conrail Heritage Unit, and it's one of 20 locomotives that Norfolk Southern painted to honor its predecessor railroads. And Conrail, in my opinion, is the coolest of the bunch, with this cool Conrail blue livery and iconic logo. But yeah, let's get started here in the front. Alright, so on top we have the number boards 8098, the twin headlights, windshield wipers, and inside there is an event recorder. Then on top of the nose we have grab irons and sand filler hatches, and I didn't realize this, but there's actually these blue rectangles around each of the parts. Now unfortunately they messed up on my model because they don't have the rectangles on the edges. Then in the nose we have this indent for the headlights, which Norfolk Southern actually mounts on the top. Then we have a grab iron ladder, more grab irons on the sides. It's actually an extra one on the engineer's side. And then it says Conrail in the middle, and on the nose door there's actually a warning label that says caution, watch your hands, might get squished. Then we have some stanchions, white handrails on the sides, and ditch lights on the anti-climber. And when I first got it, this thing is actually popping out a bit, and I had to push it down, and the paint job, it's a little bit iffy. Then we have this red MU cable, which is being held by this chain, MU hoses on the sides, train line hose, and your standard ScaleTrains metal knuckle coupler. Some small labels here, coupler cut lever, and we have this red MU cable receptacle, which actually sticks out quite a bit. Then here's the side of the cab. It is interesting that there's actually two mirrors and sunshade on top. Then we have the road number 8098, Norfolk Southern ES44AC, and vents for the cab and air conditioner. There also is this orange light on top, and there is some rivet detail. Then in the front we have a stairwell with yellow painted edges, and they're made of see-through etched metal. And it says watch your step. And then we got the F for front. There is a brake pipe cutout and toilet drain. Then here's the jack pad, and below we have the GE high-ad truck with some nice molded in details, and they painted the wheels brown. Alright, so after the cab we have the AC inverter cabinet with panels molded in with these tiny signs saying danger, high voltage. And the side of the fuel tank has this silver painted E-bell. Then above we have these two white stripes which connects to the rest of the Conrail logo, which people call the can opener. Then on top we have some air intakes for the dynamic brakes, and some grab irons along the sides and this railing. And then here we have the central air intake. Below is this panel with silver hinges, and there's a grab iron ladder to the back of this. And on top there's these tiny lifting rings. Then on the bottom we have the fuel tank with some details, like the emergency fuel cutoff switch, the digital fuel gauge, the fuel fill, and some more gauges. Then in the back we have the radiator section, with these vents on the sides which are actually see-through. You can't see that fan at the top. And there also is a brake wheel. It's actually finely molded, and you can see some controls at the top, and this is the way they keep the fire extinguisher. And a lot of these labels are actually legible. Then on the sill we have an AEI tag, and there's a brake chain underneath which is actually split into two parts. And in the corner there are these yellow nubs which are the brake stick holder. Alright, now let's go check out the back section. So on top we have the twin headlight, road numbers on the sides, Conrail, and there is an embedded sand filler hatch. It's quite tucked in there, and two white grab irons, and some rear ditch lights, which is another feature of Norfolk Southern. And on the bottom we have some spare knuckle coupler holders. Alright, now let's go check out the other side, where down here we have the air dryer filter, and tucked up inside here is the water level sight glass for the cooling water. Next up we have another brake stick holder, and the air reservoir tanks with some piping going in between. And then further along we have some vents for the dynamic brakes, which are see-through. Then we have this raised section, which the top is painted white, part of the white stripes, though there is a bit of a gap on the edge, which in real life is actually seamless. And over here we have a door to access the cab with a windshield wiper, and they have a small mirror for the engineer with the tall mirror folded up on the side. And here's how it looks like from the front. Then down here we have some more fuel tank details, and this silver painted spitter valve. There also is this bracket sticking out of the truck, maybe it's to hold another train, and this builder's plate is mostly just text. It also comes with flag holders. It seems like this handrail already broke off, so that kinda sucks. And now let's go check out the roof. Alright, so on top, you can see there's blue outlines on the walkway. And on the cab, we have the new PTC antenna array, which is painted in this light blue color. It's actually quite complex, with little black spots painted, and the three lines in between. There is a little gray in the middle, lift rings on the edges, and there are some reflective stripes on top. Then after that we have some more panels with some warning labels and latches molded in. Then in the middle there's a K5 HLR2 horn, and this is pretty interesting that they have shower caps, which keeps it clear of debris. Then next up we have the exhaust stack, which does have these little points in the corners, and the inside has this black bar. And then in the back we have the radiator, which the front part is more boxy with these fans inside. Pretty cool that you can see it through the grates. Then in the back we have the radiator wings, made of etched metal, and it's open on the sides. Alright, so now let's go check out the bottom. So here's the front truck, the fuel tank in the middle, and the rear truck. And there's actually lots of plumbing detail underneath the sill. And here's how the truck would move in its frame with a chain. There also are sanding lines, which I forgot to mention before. Alright, so this is the normal Norfolk Southern ES44 GEVO, which the Conrail is actually one of these painted. So they're actually like sister units, and the road numbers are actually just 3 numbers apart. Now, aside from the paint scheme differences, they actually have different fonts in the number boards, and the road numbers are also different sizes. 8095 has italics, while on Conrail it's normal. And on top, this one has the older PTC antenna dome, which on Conrail has the newer PTC antenna farm. And they do have the same horns, just on Conrail it's capped. And in the back, you can see the road numbers are shifted up. Now, this model is actually the first run back in 2021, while the Conrail is the latest run. So let's see how ScaleTrains changed in 3 years. So first, let's take a look at the steps. The original ones are painted pretty thick, and the lines aren't really that even. While on the latest one, they're painted really thin, and the holes in the steps are really big compared to the original. And here you can compare them side by side. Also, the way they painted the orange light, they made it with a streak, versus the new one, it's a clean dot. Although in real life, there's really a blue beam around it. On the old one, they didn't paint the top of the E-bell silver, but on the new one, they did. Another improvement they made is the MU hoses. You can see the tips of the old one are pretty chunky. Compared to this one, it's actually surprising how much of a difference it made. It's a lot crispier. And if you look at the old fuel gauge, you can see the edges are a bit crude. Versus the new one, it's a lot cleaner, and they painted the inside of the fuel gauge black, along with the radio gauge on top. And if you look on the rear, there's actually one less link in the chain holding up the MU cable. And if you look at the spare knuckle couplers, the old one is partially painted. Versus the new one, they painted the whole knuckle. Now for the brake chains, on the old one, there is a pretty big gap. Versus on the new one, it's actually closer together, and you can actually make it look like it's touching. So that's a lot more realistic looking than the older one where it looks like it's floating and they'll never actually touch each other. But it is funny, on my old NS GEVO, this handrail is broken, just like the new one, so that hasn't changed. But other than that, I'm pretty impressed that ScaleTrains actually made efforts to improve the model. Alright, so this is the Walthers 89-foot TPDX flat car, and these are specially made for military trains, which I do have loads which you'll see later on in the video. But anyways, let's get started here in the front. Alright, so on the end, here we have your standard Walthers Protomax metal knuckle coupler. Can see grab irons on the sides, and there's some information text, which is pretty crisp. And on the left, there's this tall grab iron. And in the corner, there's a grab iron and stirrup step. Then on the side, we have some FRA safety stripes, some more text, and lots of banding anchors, and a strapping winch, which does have a hole to thread through. And here's a jacking point, and here's how the truck looks like. So as we make our way across, can see it says TPDX, the car number, and you can see the retaining valve part of the air brake system. And over here it says loose chains must be stowed within the channels, and that's actually referring to the channels that are in the deck. And these channels go all the way across the car. Now the reason for these channels are to tie down military loads. They would put chains from the shackles to the deck floor, and that would help anchor in place, because otherwise when a train moves it would go like this. And on the edges there are stake pockets with actual holes, including on the ends. Then back on the side we have the red TTX logo, and apparently this car is called the GSH90. And here's the other end, which does have that tall grab iron. And then here's the edge, and here's the other side, which is similar but does have detail for the air brake system, which has this long line that goes across, and then attaches to this black lever handbrake. Alright, so here's how it looks like from the bottom. Here we got the truck, pretty simple design. Can see some air brake rigging, which is pretty decent. And here's the other end. Now I did figure out that this loose piece is actually from this part here. There also are these latches that go throughout the car, and they can actually be opened up if you go here on the bottom and push this in. And this pedestal will pop out along with the hinges. You can't see it actually rotates, which is what happens in the prototype. And after, you can close this door on the side, just like that, and you do the same thing on the other side, although this one is a bit crooked. Alright, so here it is with 4 pedestals set up, and then we can add in a shipping container on top. And there we go, it just fits in like this. So this car also transports containers as well. So here are the other two TPDX flat cars, which are pretty much the same, just the car numbers are different, and one of them says for military use only. Now these flat cars are actually different from the flat cars I unboxed previously, and they're not really designed for military vehicles. You can see this one has these rails sticking out, and this one is just flat, and they're missing the channels in the deck, which is used by an actual military train. Alright, so here is a fully loaded military train. We've got a lot of variety of transports here. So first off, we have the standard US Army truck, the LMTV. It is 3D printed. Now since the last time, I've actually added windows. These are just made by Scotch tape, and I added black lines for the window gaskets. And then next we have two Humvees, which are also 3D printed, still same as the last time. Then in the back we have another LMTV, the M1078, and it's actually by Roco Minitanks, which is still in the molded in green. It is a plastic kit, and I still need to paint it. And it has a shelter here at the back, which you can take off. And these trucks are actually related. It's actually the original model, while this one has a more armored cab. It's actually called the A kit. And right over here, this is an Oshkosh PLS palletized load system. It's from Kniga, a German brand. It's a really cool military truck. And I also want to get this because it's the newer version of the HEMTT. The Roco ones are a much older design, which puts a spare tire behind the cab, while the newer one puts it on top, which is a lot more common nowadays. And this model comes with moving wheels, so they do roll. You can see I painted the engine vent different color, side view mirrors folded up, and then in the back we have this green water tank load, which is supported by this arm here. And then here's how it looks like in the back. You know, a lot of these pieces were separate and you had to put them all together. And on top we got a fire extinguisher. Alright, and then here's how it looks like on the other side. And the water load is detachable. And then here is the water tank by itself. It's actually called the HIPPO and can carry 2,000 gallons. And here is the unloaded section. You can see the texture is quite rough with lots of air bubbles and holes. And that's because it's a resin kit, so you would have to fill all these in if you really cared about that. And then here's a closer look at the wheels, just painted black. But definitely one of my favorites. And then here is the HEMTT fuel truck from Roco, which we did look at before, but since then I did make some improvements, like adding decals for the unit and the hazmat placard. I also painted the windshield wipers black, some really tiny decals here, and over here it's actually a bit crooked because it's one of my first times putting decals on, so yeah, that was not good. We also have some fire extinguishers tucked between the wheels, then there's a ladder in the back, and then here it says JP8, which is the type of fuel they use, kerosene based. And here's a look at the other side. Alright, so next up we have the Oshkosh LVSR. It's basically the Marine Corps version of the PLS that we saw before. And this is a Trident miniatures model. It's pretty cool with this armored cab, and there's a tow bar in the front, which I should add in a string to connect it to the top of the cab. And this model does have a windshield, which I did have to custom make. Just put some plastic sheet from a packaging, although I probably should have cut out the frame a bit more so it's not so deep. And the wheels are actually one piece, so you do have to be careful not to paint the rim. And this is also a resin kit. Here's how it looks like in the back. And this mechanism is actually used to carry containers. It does have hooks at the top, so if you had a shipping container, you could put this on the back of it. And that would be a load, although in real life these things would be sticking out. Also, you can use that same HIPPO container that we saw from the other kit, and that actually fits in just fine. It also comes with this crane in the middle. And then you can actually take off the grabber if you wanted to. And in real life, sometimes it would actually store these upside down, although you'll probably have to glue it. And then we have this hook just like the PLS. Although this thing is very, very fragile. And don't worry, I just glued it back. But yeah, this part especially shows why resin kits are inferior to plastic. Especially for small parts like this, it's very delicate and soft. Then over here we have some strikers from Trident Miniatures, but since the last time I did try to add in some weathering to make it look more interesting, and actually look pretty cool, but the thing is with pigment, when I try to clear coat it, you know, it just wash away. So now we're left with this. Now for the other striker, I actually added some decals in the front. Now I know it doesn't make sense because it says JP8, which is fuel, but from far away I don't think people are really going to pay attention to that. It's just for aesthetics to have some kind of decal there. And then our last load here is the HEMTT M9077. So since last time I did add some decals on the sides, just says 50 with a chevron, a little bit here, and some unit ID numbers in the front and the back. And here you can see the whole family of Oshkosh HEMTT trucks. Alright, so I also picked up some models from Artitec, a company from the Netherlands who make ready-made models. So over here we have two Humvees. They're actually from the Gulf War era, so it's actually quite dated. And this one's actually mounted with a TOW anti-tank missile launcher, which nowadays they would put a turret around it. And the door and the windows, they're not armored, but it does have some nice weathering and paint job applied. It is pretty realistic looking. Check out those windshield wipers and grille. Unfortunately, this side view mirror is actually bent backwards. And then in the back it says AM General, and there also is this antenna. It's flexible. It also does have a hole in the roof, so you can see a bit of the inside. And on the bottom, there's just 2 screw holes for the packaging. Alright, so here's the other Humvee. This one comes with a shelter in the back, which does have this hatch in the rear. This Humvee is more like a pickup truck. And it's also a bit unique since it has that green tarp around the front. So then we have the HIMARS rocket launcher. I was pretty excited about this release because it's something modern. It also comes with these decals if you want the smiling HIMARS, or if you want it from the US Army. And the rocket launcher, it does swivel and you can activate fire. The HIMARS uses the GMLRS, which is a guided rocket. And you can also swivel it to change the angle, so it's pretty pulsable. And it's actually the wheeled version of the tracked M270. And they both fire the same rockets, but the M270 does have twice the capacity. And this launcher is only supported by this one stand. And there's a little black wire in there. And here's the back view. You can't see the stand just gets stuck on that part there. And if you want to deactivate it, just fold it inside like this. This model is extremely well detailed, and apparently the wheels are by Goodyear. And here's what the bottom looks like. Alright, so now that we have everything, let's go run some trains. So for my final thoughts, the Norfolk Southern Conrail is a great looking locomotive from ScaleTrains. It's fairly accurate, and I always liked the Conrail heritage unit. It was also cool that you can see improvements in the model compared to a few years ago, refining the MU hoses, painting the spare knuckle couplers, and E-bell foley, the improved fuel tank details, the closer chain, and new stepwell design. One thing though, I was a bit disappointed, it was missing the 4 blue rectangles in the nose, and the white edge of the walkway isn't painted seamlessly. So I emailed ScaleTrains about it, and they sent me a reply saying they can actually replace the shell, so hopefully that works out. Now for the Walthers TPDX flat cars, I actually was unaware Walthers even released this car until I saw a video by James JLW2 2000, and yeah, it's a pretty great car. I like the cool mechanism with the retractable pedestals, which works just like the real thing, and you could put containers also on it, and has the channel decks unlike other types of flat cars. I definitely was not expecting anyone to make this car because HO scale military trains, they're pretty niche, but I'm glad Walthers decided to produce it. Now for the military vehicles, which I've been working on this collection for quite a while, it was quite difficult to assemble these resin kits by Kniga and Trident miniatures because things would always keep breaking, and then you have to glue it back, you gotta sand them, you gotta paint them, and you gotta make your own windows. It was quite a learning experience, but in the end I was able to finish it. Now the Roco models, they're way easier to work with since they're plastic, and a lot of it's properly molded, although they are older designs, but I'm glad I finally finished them. And lastly, for the Artitec models, definitely really cool. They are highly detailed and great loads. Although the Humvees are pretty dated from the really early 90s, it still looks great on a military train. I just wish Artitec would not have the roof hatch open. I feel like even in a diorama you wouldn't really open the hatch of a HIMARS, but at least I was able to close it myself. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the video. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Is there anyone else who likes military trains? If you guys liked the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you hadn't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.